Hello and welcome to Tyler's Techcast episode 6 with myself, Zero Zebra. And I'm joined today by the lovely Tyler, as always. Hello, Tyler. How are you?
I'm amazing, thanks.
And we're also joined today by a very special guest. It's Uri Herrera of the Nitrux project or Nitrix project. How are you?
Hello. Good. Great.
One thing I wanted to ask you, Yuri, actually, is how's Corona been treating your just general life and work?
Well, considering that I work from home, it hasn't been big
It's no
change.
change. It's business as usual.
Yeah, really. The only way that it affects me is that I can't as as I used to. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's the same.
So, is there like a lockdown or anything going where you are?
Um, there was, but they relaxed it like a month ago.
So I think we're
Um,
we're about to probably go into another lockdown. I reckon. Or do you share that same thought, Zero?
If we keep going at the rate we're going, with everywhere having local lockdowns, eventually they'll just have to say no, no, no. It's all go a normal lockdown again.
I probably would.
Because everybody gets infected after 10 o'clock at night, don't you, Tyler?
Yeah,
That's when it hits you.
that's the good rule, isn't it? Pubs are all shut at like 10 now. You're immune from the virus as long as it's before 10 o'clock.
As long as it's before 10.
So I think some of the topics we've got are basically kind of quite Nitrixy centric, because I think that's why I wanted you on here to sort of see where you're at with the project as a whole and some of the recent changes you've made, particularly OpenRC as a topic we want to talk about quite a bit. What was your thought process of making that change? I know it was a long time coming, but what made you flip the switch?
um, we had been testing changing the init system for a long time. I really didn't want to continue using MD. Um, and at first we were trying just with CSV init and trying to make it work. That wasn't too difficult. But I figured that CSV init was, in a way like X11 in that, it works, but it's old.
Yeah, well,
Um,
you've also, I do believe you've now got an actual Wayland session now, don't you, on Nitrux as well?
Yeah, yeah. There's a Wayland session. It's not the default yet.
Is that something you're aiming towards? Uh-oh. We'll just carry on. So we had a bit of a technical difficulty. We was talking about Wayland and Nitrux potentially implementing it in the future as a default. Is that a direction you'd like to go in?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We want to make the Wayland session the default.
Um,
It isn't the default yet because it wasn't working great with the NVIDIA proprietary driver, and because I have mostly NVIDIA hardware, well, I can't use it, so that was a problem.
so why the switch
The
to?
classic story.
Why do you want to switch to Wayland as opposed to X11?
Uh, because it's the future. I mean, we can only keep using X11 for so long.
Do you think
Now,
that it's going to
eventually.
eventually come around in that everyone's just using Wayland? Because I swear it's been kind of the thing that's going to happen for ages.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually, TM.
Mhm. I actually, on Ubuntu, I always switch the session to Ubuntu on Wayland before I log in
Really?
for the first time. Yeah, I always switch it to Wayland.
I still can't, for the things that I do. Wayland isn't there, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. For if you just want to use the computer, like browsing and opening some games and some apps, like that's fine for that. At
Hmm.
least on Intel GPUs and Radeon GPUs.
Is it still
Hmm.
But
got
if you
the?
want to do
Go on.
right, but if you want to NVIDIA cards, it's difficult. If you want to record the screen, it's also I
it's the
think that
same.
doesn't work yet.
No, well, I think there's something that makes it work. People have said to me, but I've never really looked into it too much. Isn't it the same for remote desktop as well? You're kind of a bit out of luck there with most Wayland sessions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's still on its early days.
Well, Nitrux is
but
kind of still fairly in its early days. I saw your Twitter the other day about DistroWatch, and you was having a little bit of a rant about DistroWatch getting some things wrong.
yeah, some. Yeah.
Some.
Yeah.
What's your kind of overall view of just DistroWatch then, and sort of what it serves for the community?
Well, I mean, I don't know what the problem is with us.
So when you first came about in the scene, the sort of submission process of getting your distro on the site, what is that then? So you just apply for it and then you just have to sort of wait around and then they decide that you're good enough to be on there, or how does that work?
I thought it would be a good idea that we I thought it would be a good idea that they list that they listed the distribution on the website because of the higher traffic and exposure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I had to send them an email with the information that they usually have, the description, some links, the book tracker, and stuff that they have on the website. They didn't take too much time to add it, and I thought, well, I mean, when they finally did add it to their database, I thought, well, I mean, that's awesome, that's cool, and we did saw like a spike of visits.
Was it a significant spike? Was there like a significant spike in traffic to your site once you'd actually got on there? I'm wondering how instrumental it is in kind of making or breaking sort of a distro's overall sort of standing.
Yeah, I mean, we before they added us to their database, we were like averaging like 150 users like a week, and the day that they added the distribution, we had 2,000.
Oh wow! So it did
on
make
a single day.
real change.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just a shame.
And I mean,
Go on.
I was happy for it, but things didn't work out great.
So why can't they seem to just sort of get it right then? I don't understand.
I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what the problem is with us. I really don't, because it's not that they not only they just continue to insist on putting the version number wrong.
Yeah.
They don't list all the releases that we've had. They don't put us on front page. I mean, I really have.
Is your mic settings what is it, push to talk or something? Because your audio's dipping in and out.
No.
No. Okay. So one of my favourite things that the thing that Nitrux taught me actually was how good AppImages are, because before that I kind of stayed away from any of these Flatpak snaps and AppImages as well. But then Nitrux kind of when I first used it, not the first time, but when AppImages were like integrated as a thing, I just think they're so much more, for me, they're more convenient than the other two.
Yeah.
What was
it?
What was the kind of thought process of embracing AppImages like you have? Because not a lot of other distros out there do. I know Manjaro now actually includes AppImage Launcher in some of their versions of 20.1, which I thought was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Well, when we started like focusing on AppImage, it was pretty much after we dropped any intention of using snaps. So we look for another portable format that we could focus on. And it was pretty easy to add to the distribution because the tools were already there. Um, Pro Bono, which is the creator of it, already had the tools that we needed to integrate AppImages any desktop, so it wasn't difficult.
So Zero, you've not really used AppImages a whole lot, have you?
No, I haven't really. Actually, I think a long, long time ago, and by a long, long time ago, I mean probably like, let's say, I reckon maybe like 6 to 8 months or something. I think I did actually try Nitrux, and that was the most exposure I had to using AppImages. And I could get behind AppImages more if I had an easier way to control them, because my main bugbear with them is having to re-download the entire AppImage to kind of update them. That was my like whole thing that I didn't really like about it. But if there was an easy way to manage that, then I'd probably be a little happier with them.
Doesn't one of the things you can bundle it with handle the updates for certain AppImages?
Yep.
Yeah, because
actually, it's one of the tools that Pro Bono already have.
Well,
it's called literally AppImage update, and yeah.
So, what AppImages actually bundle that out of the box then? Like big ones.
Because it's like for an AppImage to be updatable using AppImage update, they have the developers or the person that creates the AppImage has to add has to embed the URL where the AppImage file is expected to be, like always, so that AppImage update can parse that URL and compare and do the comparison between the old file and the new file using the setsync file, the differential file, because AppImage updates AppImages using Delta updates. So
I remember having a conversation.
Not all of them.
I remember having a conversation with you quite a while ago, Uri, about potentially making like an AppImage store. Was that ever a thing? Is that something that's still possibly going to happen, or?
Yeah, the software center, yes. The software center uses as a backend the AppImage Hub website. Their API. Yep.
And what sort of a process is that? Is it kind of quite a simple one, just to sort of link them statically and use like curl or wget or something just to pull it in and then make them executable and integrate them like so, or?
Yeah, I mean the integration can be done externally, like it's not a part of the software center.
But the software center could handle updates.
Yeah, the software center can.
Would that make you more likely to use them, Zero?
I mean, all the time that I'm on Ubuntu, probably not, because most things already have a native package anyway. So it's kind of, I don't know. But maybe if I did switch to, I don't know, maybe if I went back to OpenSUSE or something like that, maybe I'd use some more.
It's the portability that I kind of really like. So when I'm testing certain distros, a lot of the time off camera, I have like just an SSD, an external SSD, where I just have a load of AppImages and their icon files corresponding, and I could just copy them over into the folders, and I'm good to go like straight away. And I think that's the sort of the thing for me that really sold it on it was just how portable that they are.
Yeah. Kind of like the Portable Apps project, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, wasn't that kind of the sort of the sort of inspiration behind AppImages or something? Was there anything there?
I guess it must have been, because they're so similar.
Pro Bono says that his inspiration to create AppImages comes from the DMG files of macOS.
Yeah, they're very similar, I suppose, actually.
Yeah.
So Pro Bono is kind of a lifesaver actually, because he lists loads of just the recipes on his GitHub there, and I kind of just live off of those recipes for my AppImages most of the time. Just saves me a lot of time. So how hard was it getting the Wine AppImage up and running? Because that's something that's really quite a cool idea.
Well, that AppImage is made by a third party. It wasn't made by us.
So I've read. Go on.
But we have made an AppImage of Wine too. We just haven't used it yet.
I read somewhere that it would be possible to sort of ship a Windows application in an AppImage with bundled Wine, so you could potentially, like, let's use Notepad for example. You could just download an AppImage called Notepad that's got bundled in it everything that it needs just to run straight away. I think that would be a game changer.
That is possible. It has been possible for a long time, but then again, people think that AppImage is something that was released like 3 weeks ago.
Why do you think that is then? Why do you think that compared to the other two, AppImages are still kind of looked at as like a non-thing?
I think to me it has something to do with the fact that GNOME and KDE like embrace Flatpak, and KDE also to extent also supports snaps, and that both just completely ignore AppImage.
So aside from Nitrux, is there another Manjaro's AppImage launcher bundling in the distro? Is there another distro out there that focuses on sort of AppImages and portability? I don't think there really is there?
Well, I think Debian also ships with AppImage installer.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I think. But no, other than. But I mean, it's not like they focus.
Yeah.
They add that like Slack support for it to better integrate the AppImages, but it's not their focus. Their focus is still the traditional pack.
So what can we expect from Nitrux moving forward, like in the close future?
When it comes to AppImages, we also added something that's called AppImage Builder.
Yeah.
And AppImage Builder is a program that lets you build AppImages, but using recipes.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you want to, it would be something similar to using AppImage build.
Do you want to just briefly explain what the sort of recipe stuff is and how that all works to someone who might not know?
Yeah, like for example, a recipe is a text file where you put the packages that you want to use to create an app image from. Currently, what it does is that it downloads those packages from a package manager using a package manager. It extracts them and creates the bundle, creates the app tier, adds the app image, the runtime for the architecture, and just creates the app image file, and that's it.
And it's really
simple.
It is really quite simple as well, isn't it?
Yeah. You just basically have to list packages.
So when I used Nitrux quite a while ago, you had a different way of implementing the actual install, which reminds me a lot of other distributions that followed a kind of similar path, like Silverblue, where it was a mutable operating system. What do you think was the benefits of going that way, and what do you think are the benefits of not going that way and having a more traditional install?
Yeah, I mean it's called an immutable system, and pretty much the main benefit is that the system wouldn't break during an update. It is often the case that when you upgrade something using any distribution using a package manager, there's a possibility that something breaks during that update. Of course, package maintainers try not to break things, but it does happen, and an immutable system will pretty much avoid that, making the root directory read-only. That would simplify a lot of things and keeping the user data separate from the root.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if you want to add a new application, instead of adding the contents of the package using a package manager to the root, you keep it separate on something like an overlay, and you keep it separate. And if you add to that you can keep it completely separate from the system using something like an AppImage,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes sense.
Have you used any immutable operating systems at all, Zero?
I tested Silverblue
And what did you think?
for a day.
Oh, in-depth testing then?
Yeah, very in-depth testing, because at the time I think I was still using Vivaldi as my browser, and they do have an RPM package, but they don't have a Flatpak image. So obviously trying to install that and just trying to set everything up that wasn't a Flatpak was a royal pain in the backside, because it was literally you had to do that RPM OS tree thing for every single package and then reboot just to get my web browser working. And I was like, okay, apparently this is the future. I now have to reboot after I've installed something to make it work if it's not a Flatpak, which is that felt like a step backwards to me, because I felt like I should just be able to double click this thing and install it and it should just work like everything else. But no, apparently because it's read only, and because it wasn't a Flatpak, I had to do that. And it was just I bet once you get it up to where it's set up for your usage, it would be absolutely fine. But I was it was the whole getting there was just so. You know what it made? It made me feel very Windowsy, because I was rebooting after literally everything. You know how when you finish the Windows installer, it's you don't need to, but you probably should restart your computer even though you've just installed Firefox. So I was nah, this ain't for me.
So I guess branching off of the Vivaldi thing, what was the big news lately about a new web browser making its way to Linux that got certain people in a bit of a panic?
I'm on the edge of my seat, mate.
Exactly, yeah. So what do you think about what do you think about Microsoft Edge coming to Linux?
Oh God, I mean, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I like the, to some extent, Microsoft are kind of taking the stance that they sort of did with Android, actually, where they kind of said, okay, we need all of our services and products to be available on Android and iOS, and kind of push that out, and then expand in other areas. And I kind of like that they're sort of starting to take the same approach a little bit with Linux as well. But I think specifically Edge, really?
Where'd you
I was kind of
where'd you fall on the side of that debate, Uri, about Microsoft Edge?
Well, for one, I think that it makes people more aware of Linux. I mean, people that doesn't already know Linux.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's Chromium. There's already Chromium.
Exactly.
There's already Vivaldi. There's already Opera. There's already Brave. So
we're not going to be seeing Microsoft Edge bundled in the next version of Nitrux then?
No.
That's a
No, it kind of, you know what? It's sort of starting to look a little bit like, and you know, the comments will probably absolutely love me for this, but it's starting to feel a bit in the browser space as almost the same thing as yet another Ubuntu, but it's
Yeah.
turning into yet another Chromium.
I guess that kind of makes me want to ask Yuri, when you first started, how did you feel about that kind of mindset of people saying, "Is this just another Ubuntu?" Did that really quite annoy you?
Yes, but in the beginning, I would also understand why they would say that.
So,
Like,
Hmm.
because to me, it's like when you first start a distribution, um, you obviously have to use something as a base, unless you're very um, knowledgeable about building Linux from scratch or something like that.
yep.
But if you're not, you're going to use something as a base, most Ubuntu. So like it's understandable that people say, well, it's another Ubuntu, but to me, it's like if that distribution, like 1 or 2 years from now, from where it started, hasn't changed anything, you know, any critical part of the system, or hasn't created something unique to that distribution, or hasn't created something that uh, stands out
Yep.
from that distribution. It I mean, there's no differentiation.
Yeah.
That
No, I get that.
Because I would kind of agree with Yuri a little bit, because I actually, when I discovered Nitrix and I discovered the NX desktop, I actually kind of came away from it not feeling like it was yet another Ubuntu, because it was so different to the core distro.
Yeah. What is the current status of NX as a desktop? Because I know that there was some sort of argument about whether that was ever mentioned in any of your sort of literature or anything like that, and I know that was something DistroWatch also kind of dropped the ball on as well with Nomad or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was initially called Nomad,
Yeah.
so that they got that right, but they always put in the description of the distribution that it was a desktop environment. We literally never said it was a desktop environment. We always called it a customization layer, because that's what it is. It's not a desktop environment because the Maui apps are separate,
Yeah.
and they didn't exist even back then. So I have literally no idea why they called it a desktop environment.
So how do you feel about just the overall MauiKit sort of integration within Nitrux and stuff? Because I've heard people complain to me that it doesn't come pre-installed with, say, like console, and it uses station and stuff. Whereas I'm like, I get it, but for something to progress, it kind of needs to be embraced by the people making it to kind of push that out as a default. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not. It's also like you can't uninstall those things. You can install whatever you
Well,
want
exactly.
ultimately. But exactly, it's like if we don't use it ourselves, we are the developers. No one's going to use it
Do you want to
outside of us.
briefly explain MauiKit at all?
Yeah, MauiKit is a convergence framework that uses Kirigami as a base. You can use MauiKit to create convergent apps. That is applications that run on multiple form factors like phone, desktop. We don't have a Fine TV yet, for example, but if they do make one, we can get one, and we can try to make something for smart TV or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But yeah, you can use the same code base for multiple form factors.
So, what mobile phone do you use then? I'm going to assume it's going to be an Android device of some sort.
So daily driver, yeah.
And how do you feel about the
Okay.
Linux mobile space? Have you been keeping an eye on sort of Pine phones and stuff like that?
Yeah, we actually have two Pine phones. Uh, I mean developer kits, but we have two of them. I I have tested most, if not all, of the available distributions for it, and I can see the progress. And I can see how even something like Wayland is usable on a phone, um, and definitely serves to test the MAUI applications.
So, would you ever consider sort of making a Nitrux image for mobile?
There's going to be one. Just it's gonna take some time, but
No, that's
there's
understandable.
going to be one.
I think that would really quite suit it as well with the sort of, as I say, the convergence of MauiKit, etc. I think it would be a good fit to have that as like a handheld OS as well. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we already have app images for ARM64
Really? Where are they held?
on the MauiKit website.
Oh, okay. I might have to check those out. So, Zero, you've not used any Pine phones or anything, have you yet?
No, I'm a bit of a potato in that respect, but
Well, the camera's a potato on the Pine phone as well, so you've got that sort of in common.
oh, is it?
Yeah, it's not cool.
No,
No.
no. They did actually on a sort of related note, they did actually just release a camera upgrade kit for the
Megapixels.
Fairphone 3.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know how, like, what the deal is, because apparently the camera still outputs pictures at the same megapixel size, but the sensor is bigger or something, and then it condenses it down. I don't know. Either way, you can now replace the modules in your Fairphone with better ones and upgrade it to the Fairphone 3 Plus. That's literally the only difference, but I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, there you go.
I'm not going to do it though, because I'm not in the habit of taking photos on my phone all the time anyway.
No. So with Nitrux, Yuri, do you ever feel like there's going to be a time when it is sort of one of those top 10-ish kind of distros that people are thinking to download and install with sort of recognition of its own standalone thing?
Yeah, I think that when we get to a point where we have like the whole set of applications, because I mean we have like 5 stable applications, but they're not enough. I mean the whole point of making the application is to have like a core suite of applications
Mm-hmm.
that cover like the basics, and of course like having NX desktop remake into using MauiKit. And I think when we get to that point, we probably will have people interested in Nitrux.
So to me, Nitrix feels like kind of a really good showcase for what you can do with KDE. Have you ever thought or had sort of requests to offer a different desktop environment or version of Nitrux?
Yeah, yeah. Some people have asked if if we were planning to release a GNOME-based ISO, but yeah, it's not
No.
what we want to do.
So you kind of just want to be like a single desktop version. This is Nitrux. This is what you're going to get, and this is what you're going to use.
Yeah, I mean we want to focus on just one thing. I think that's a simpler approach.
Well, I also think it's a smarter approach as well, because I think some of the distros out there that try and sort of cater to everyone and have 20 different desktop environment ISOs to choose from and stuff, I just don't think it makes full amount of sense, because you're not focusing on what sort of makes you good. You're trying to just please everyone and do a half-hearted attempt at dozens of different distros, desktops. So there's another KDE desktop that kind of focuses on Chaos OS. Have you ever used Chaos?
Yeah, I've used it.
What did you think of their approach to KDE?
I think that they also have chosen like the right path in just focusing
Yeah.
on Qt, on KDE, mostly Qt software. I think that's fantastic for them because they can, focus on just keeping keeping that toolkit as as polished as possible for their users.
And what do you
Um,
think? What do you think makes a desktop? What do you think what should a desktop do for you? Do you think it should look pretty and have all the flashy bells and whistles, or should it get out of the way and let you focus on what you want to do, or should it be somewhere in between?
I think that it has to be something in like, because it can be beautiful but very complicated to use,
Mm-hmm.
because the fact that it's pretty doesn't mean that it's easy, or it can be not as pretty, not have a lot of effects and transparency and stuff, and be extremely useful, right? But I mean, it has to be like in the middle, where you can start to tweak it
Mm-hmm.
to accommodate to your workflow.
So I think Nitrux is actually the out-of-box best looking KDE desktop around. To be honest with you, I don't know if Zero disagrees with that or.
No, I think so because I mean I'd really like it actually if NX had like an installer script or something. I might have to try and figure out how to do one.
Did you not have that at one point, Yuri? Like a sort of a installer script or some way of getting sort of the NX kind of feel on other distros? Because I know there was that brief stint where Manjaro had the NX desktop version as well.
There are packages in the AUR. We have Debian packages for Debian and Ubuntu distribution.
So if
Um,
let's talk doomsday scenarios. If Ubuntu just completely shut shop tomorrow, what would Nitrux do?
well, instead of using Ubuntu rootfs, we would use a Debian rootfs.
Have you ever looked into maybe switching over to? I know it's a silly question, but to like Debian or something to get more of a pure kind of thing? No.
No, I mean, we would still be doing the same changes. So to me, it wouldn't like be that much of a difference.
No, I wouldn't have thought it would have been. So Zero, you're using Ubuntu as well these days, aren't you?
Meh.
And are you like a GNOME guy, aren't you?
No, but yes. I like Ubuntu's implementation of GNOME. But if I was using another distro, I would not necessarily pick GNOME as a desktop environment, if that makes sense.
Where do we all see this landscape of Linux in, say, 5 years then? What do we think is going to be the big sort of changes? Or even if there is a big change, what do we think is going to happen?
I think that we have to have something that mainstream users want to use. In speaking of Linux on mobile, because right now it's in the state where it's cool that you can do it, but right now it's not something that you want to sell to people. So yeah, I mean, once we get to the point where we are with desktop distributions,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the mobile
it's gonna
side's
be.
got a long way to go. I mean, could you imagine giving like your grandma a Pine phone and being like, go and do the business? It wouldn't work, would it?
Yeah.
What about you, Zero? Is there anything that you think's going to change at all, or do you think we're kind of going to stay on a steady path and just gradually keep making little baby steps?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's already kind of getting there at the minute anyway. But I think maybe the one area that we're really going to see some changes, even in sort of say the next couple of years, I think is probably with gaming, in respect to sort of with efforts like Proton and stuff, because that has already really massively changed things, for Linux gaming.
What was the big sort of news about Microsoft and Linux? I kind of half-heartedly sort of kept in a loop about
Was
that.
there some big news about Microsoft and Linux?
They bought Bethesda, didn't they? They bought that games
Oh
company.
yeah, they bought Bethesda, and then everybody said that was going to be the end of like playing Fallout on Linux or whatever, and I was just like, really? Okay, good.
I guess it kind of makes me wonder, like, do you think there's too much kind of reactionary tribalness in certain parts of just the community as a whole?
It's understandable because it's Microsoft.
So what did you think about that news then, Uri? Where did you sort of lay your head on there?
I mean, I think that it would be pretty stupid of them if they just, suddenly stop offering the Bethesda games for a portion of the gaming population. I think that when you make a game, you want to sell it to as many people as possible. So.
And who saw the Raymond article about what was it? Windows becoming a bona fide distribution.
Oh man,
did anyone see that?
I heard about it. I didn't read the actual thing that he wrote.
So I guess I'm trying to sort of remember what it said, but it was kind of basically like, in a few years or something similar to that, Windows could kind of be a part of Linux where it's like a compatibility layer. I think he used emulation layer or something, where you're going to sort of have a Linux distro where the Windowsy part is now something to help you run Win32 applications or something.
Is that not just wine?
Yeah, I guess in a sense. It was an interesting read, though. I'm surprised you didn't actually read it. I think
no, yeah, read it.
Neither of you have read it.
No.
No, so I'm all alone on this one then. Did you see any of the videos that sort of came out about it?
I have seen some of the videos from a developer on Twitter that he like plays with WSL stuff, but like no. Other than that.
So what do you think of WSL then? Are you a fan? Do you think it's a cool idea, or do you follow this whole sort of meme of embrace, extend, extinguish, and all of that nonsense?
I guess. I mean, it's a cool idea, but I don't really see the point, because if I wanted to use Linux, I would use Linux. WSL.
Have you ever used WSL 0?
I think I tried it when it first came out, because there was a period of time where I used Windows on like all my devices, as you knew. Like I had like the Windows Phone and everything as well. And I think I did try it, but literally the only thing that I used it for was to SSH into my VPS without having to install PuTTY. I think that was the only thing that I did with it. Yeah, I still don't really. I guess because I'm not the kind of person maybe that it's pitched at, but I still don't really get what it's supposed to be for. Like, because I know that people say, "Oh, it's for sysadmins," and I'm like, yeah, but sysadmins that need to deal with Linux systems probably already have a Linux like laptop or something sat there. So I'm kind of like, unless it's some very large enterprise that mostly has sort of Windows server with an occasional Linux server sitting there doing something, I'm just a little bit lost as to what it's actually kind of intended for.
Yeah, I understand that. So I'm going to switch topics back to like Nitrux. So obviously that's your job, isn't it, Yuri? That's what you do. That's what you survive off.
Yeah, that's for everyone in Nitrux. That's our full-time job.
And is that like repeatable? Could you see it be? Is it a viable business venture? Would you say for like someone else to think I'm going to start doing a distro and hopefully make a living off it? Is it easy? Is it hard? How does that all work?
I would say that it's pretty hard, pretty difficult. It's not that you can start to make a distribution and like just put a download a donation button and you're gonna make money out of that.
So the business model I think you had when quite a long time ago, was it? I think it was like a purchase, wasn't it? Was it like a $2, €2 or something purchase at some point?
Yeah, it was. It was a plugin for WordPress. It was called Paybox.
Yeah.
So the Paybox was to access one of the ISOs that we were offering at that point. But yeah, I mean, you could even just use the same URL for the other ISO and access that same ISO because they were on the same server.
So do you think there is a viable business model there that doesn't solely rely on donations, or do you think sort of the community doesn't look too well on like paying to things? Because I know that is a certain aspect that people are kind of adverse to contributing to something that could probably use a bit of financial backing or something.
Yeah. I mean, the main problem is that when people get to free and open source software, the first thing that they see is the free, and they see it as free of cost, and that's not what free stands for. It's for freedom. And when you're on this environment of free and open source and you want to start selling something, it starts to get difficult because unless it's like a game, you don't really have much chance because people is going to be like, well, why would I pay for this when I can install this from the repositories and it's free, right? But maybe that other thing that you download from the repositories, it's maintained by some people, by a single guy on a half-time basis. Doesn't get a lot of features added, or it doesn't even have a maintainer. Or no, well, it has a maintainer but not a developer. So this other commercial product has a company backing it up, has more developers, but people don't want to pay for that.
Do you think there's anything that will change in that sort of area, or is it always going to kind of be like free? I want to have something, no money attachment, or do you think for things to progress, perhaps we should start treating things a bit differently in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to have people have some interest in Linux, there has to be a way for people make a living out of being part of this whole community.
One thing that I think is really cool that's happening quite a lot more at the moment is the whole sort of pre-install. So a lot of vendors now are actually shipping laptops, etc., with different desktops, and I think that's pretty cool. I do think though we have a problem with how expensive some of them are for what you're actually getting.
Yeah, they tend to be pretty expensive, but I mean it's not like it's low machines.
No. Would you buy a Linux pre-built machine yourself, Zero?
I think it would depend a lot. I think for my desktop at least, because I now feel comfortable building my own machine, I probably either wouldn't necessarily, or I'd buy it from a sort of custom build vendor that would let me install Linux onto it at sort of the purchase time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But see, because the issue I have is that I'm sort of thinking towards the future as well, and sort of, eventually when I want to buy a new laptop, it's kind of, there aren't that many kind of custom build laptop sort of companies, let alone custom build laptop companies that also do Linux installs.
It's pretty much as clever.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, so I kind of think, okay, and I have this really OCD thing that I kind of want my desktop and my laptop to be kind of like from the same sort of company, or from the same kind of the same background.
It's a bit OCD.
Yeah, I just always have this thing. So yeah, I don't know. I think the closest that I would get to that would be to buy from, say, a company like Tuxedo or something like that, and probably go from there. Or just to try and get another company, say like PC Specialist. I know over here do some custom build laptops.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. I didn't know that was still a thing. There was also I can't remember the name of it, but there was another UK one that done something similar. Yeah.
Yeah, and it would probably be something like that. But I think it would depend really, because if I could get in the future, when I wanted to replace both my desktop and laptop, if I could get both pre-installed with Linux from the same people to the spec that I wanted, then I'd be like totally down for that. But that's just me personally, because I have that weird thing about it.
That's weird. So what's the marketplace like in Mexico, Yuri, for sort of hardware? I think I talked to you about this before, but I wonder if you're as worse off as we are, because we kind of get a hard deal for sort of hardware in comparison to our American cousins.
Oh, well, yeah, same. Everything's cheaper in way up in the north.
And is there like a Linux community of users in Mexico? Is there a lot of you, or are you kind of on your own there, or how does that all go?
Yeah, there are sometimes events about Linux. It's mostly about like developer conferences, Python conferences. But yeah, there are some events. I haven't attended any of them.
How dare you?
But yeah, there is a community of Linux users here.
And are they all using Nitrux?
I would hope so.
That's the thing. Are you the only sort of distro out of Mexico that's actually worth talking about?
Yes.
Well, there you go. At least you got that under your belt.
Oh,
A pioneer. So what
other distros are there though?
What other distros? I don't think there are any that I can think of anyway. Not one that I remember. Is there any others?
Should I consult the oracles at DistroWatch?
No, we don't need to consult DistroWatch. DW. So I know at one point you had you had like a triple boot going, didn't you, on your computer? You had Hackintosh, Linux, and Windows, wasn't it, at one point?
Yeah, I built it as a Hackintosh, but of course it has it also supports Windows. So, but yeah, the internal storage has macOS, and I have on an external SSD I have Nitrux, and within Nitrux I have my my Windows VM.
And is that done through something like vMetal or something?
That's exactly
Ah.
the case.
So, do you want to talk about vMetal at all, or how it works?
Yeah, I mean, for example, in that computer, it's pretty cool because it allows me to use all three operating systems, and I can switch, between Linux and Windows at the same time. So I can, if I were to plug in as a second monitor, I would be able to use Linux and game on Windows
And
at the same time. So it's
how
pretty cool.
much easier does vMetal make it? Because the other day I actually set up pass-through on one of my servers there, and obviously disabling the GPU and the BIOS and then going into thingy and doing all that nonsense. It is kind of a process, isn't it? Like to just do it.
Yeah, if you want to do the GPU pass-through, it's pretty complicated, tedious. I mean, you can eventually do it. It's not impossible. But yeah, what vMetal does is simplify quite extensively that process, because it pretty much does everything automatically, from grabbing the correct GPU to assign the CPU cores, the RAM, creating the virtual storage, making good use of the virtual storage.
Is there any I don't know if this is still a thing. Is there any public releases of that available? Because I might actually implement that on my own and see if it is any easier than what I've had to do.
Not yet, but you can, if you want to test vMetal, you can join one of the public chats that we have for Nitrux, and yeah, we can link you to a special file where you
A special file.
Oh.
So how large is the sort of Nitrux team at the moment? How many of you are there that's working on things?
currently there's 4 of us.
And is everyone kind of got their own thing that they focus on, or is you all sort of focus on everything, or has people got individual things?
No, we have individual things. We have Camilo Iquita and Anupam Basak. Camilo is from Colombia, Anupam is from India. They both focus on MauiKit and the Maui applications. And then there's me and Luis Lavaire. Luis is from Honduras,
Okay.
and we focus on distribution and structure that we need for the distribution, creating the packages.
And
that stuff.
how easy is it working like remotely with everyone in different sort of corners of the world? Is it something that's sort of easy, or because I know it's done a lot in Linux, so I've never really thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy because me, Camilo, and Luis, we're pretty much on the same time zone.
Right.
But yeah, because Anupam is on the time zone, it's we only get to talk to him like really late at night. But I mean, I usually stay awake pretty much all day. So
I've noticed actually your sort of time pattern seems a bit crazy. Every time I'm like, he won't be up yet, I'll send him a message, he won't reply, and you're there, bang, and I'm like, does this guy ever sleep?
yeah. Well, I mean, I have to because otherwise, we wouldn't be as organized.
Yeah, I get that. So moving forward, is there any other topics that we've not covered, Zero?
Oh, good question. Let me see if there's any questions coming in the Discord as well.
Go for it.
Oh, we had the quick question about the Ubuntu 20.10 wallpaper.
Yeah, I don't know if Yuri's going to have any insider information. Do you know what the Ubuntu 20.10 wallpaper is going to look like, Uri?
Like the same as 2004, just updated.
With a gorilla?
With a gorilla.
Well, I mean,
Some lines.
I think they have a new icon for the installer.
They did. I showed it off just the other day. It was a miraculous moment. I was so excited. Oh, that's another thing as well. One of your old icon packs is used on Blue Star, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was it called again?
Blue Star Compass.
So I don't know if everyone knows that you actually do design. You have designed quite a lot of themes out there that are sort of heavily used, haven't you?
Yeah, the first one was the Nitrux icon theme. That's where the name Nitrux came from.
Right.
Then I made the Compass icon theme. Then I made one that I didn't like, which was called Flatter. And then I made another one that's called Dots. Then I made another one that I didn't finish. That's called Zero.
It's called Zero.
Then, yeah.
Still in your name, Zero.
Oh,
then I contributed to KDE with Breeze. Then I scrapped Flutter and made Love.
Love, I think, is one of the nicest icon themes out there, actually, to be honest. I think out of all of the distros that ship with themes and stuff that they've made themselves, I think Nitrux is probably leading the front in just overall design. I think it's such a nice looking... Yeah, it's a lovely icon theme, Love. I can see why you named it Love as well, to be fair.
Yeah, thanks.
It's alright, it's alright. Don't mean to flatter you. So, moving forward, then, what do you think about just... Do you sort of contribute at all to KDE at all, apart from what you do on Nitrux? Does a lot of what you do ever make it upstream at all?
Or? There are some things, although they are kind of low-key contributions.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's not like I'm not an active contributor. For example, when I made the Recycle theme, or when I updated the Plasma theme to match the application stuff. I mean, it's not the same as back then.
Right.
But yeah, I still contribute some things.
Is there anything you really dislike about KDE? Something that you just always found doesn't work how it should or needs improving? I've got one.
I guess it can be too overwhelming for some users, for first-time users. It can be too much.
Yeah, mine kind of leads into that. The thing that
Yeah.
I think is a nightmare with KDE is actually just the system settings. I think they're a mess. I don't know if I'm alone on
It can
that.
be improved.
Yeah. What about you, Zero? Is there anything about KDE in particular that you think could sort of do with a bit of an improvement?
there's a couple of things, but whether they're sort of major or not, I don't know. I'd kind of agree with you both that the system settings to start with, if you go into some really sort of, even if you go into sort of the startup and shutdown settings, and then you get all of these extra entries and a new user's like, what on earth does all of this mean? What does it do?
Yeah.
So I think maybe they could benefit from even just having like a toggle up in the top corner somewhere that's like basic settings and advanced settings.
Yeah, I think a new user could quite easily get lost in the system settings for KDE.
Yeah. I think trying to organize the panels and use the widgets on the panels and stuff could be a little bit more intuitive.
Yeah.
It's not always clear what, trying to because I found one thing, if I add a widget to the panel, it then takes me out of the edit mode for the panel after I've done that. And it's like, I don't want it to do that. Can you please leave me to mess around with it? And the other thing I've kind of noticed, and I don't know if either of you've particularly noticed this as well. I don't know if you kind of have changed it slightly in Nitrux, Uri, but it's the font rendering. The font rendering always on KDE looks a little bit more fuzzy to me.
Yeah, I changed how's it called, the hinting
Yeah.
and the alias. I don't know, but yeah, I changed the defaults on
Hmm.
Nitrux.
I never have any problem with font rendering. I think I might just have very poor vision and everything looks amazing or something. I'm always okay with it. I don't know. Another thing that I've quite liked about the more recent versions of Nitrux in particular was including Cronkite out of the box. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I was curious about uh, why, for example, Luis is very, very, very into the tiling window
Uh-huh.
workflow. I think he uses i3 or one of those even more obscure window managers.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I was like curious why he liked that, because I always use the floating window workflow. So I mean, I just searched for a way to have that in Plasma. I came across Cronkite uh, and some other KWin plugins. I tried like three or four. They didn't work, or they work like they were kind of like annoying.
Right.
And when I tried Cronkite, it worked right away, which was a plus. And it the settings were easy to understand, and it isn't. No, it's pretty easy to start using something
And do you,
similar to a time when.
are you kind of converted now? Do you use tiling over floating, or do you still just stick to your floating?
Actually, yes, it feels weird when I don't have it.
Yeah. Well, do you like floating windows at all, Zero? I've never heard you really speak about it.
I mean, I mostly use floating. I don't think I've ever really tried tiling seriously. I'd probably end up using something like the like pop shell extension to start with. But yeah, I think it's just because I can never really train myself to use too many keyboard shortcuts, so I never really got into the whole tiling kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think a new user could probably work it out instantly either. I think what's good about distributions that have made it kind of a secondary thing or just something to ship with it is that the options there, but by default it's going to be fairly easy for a new user to just fiddle around with it. And if they want to use it, it's there, and I think that's quite a cool idea. Best of both worlds.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think with Cronkite being a plugin for KWin, it makes it a little bit easier to get used to tiling Windows workflow,
Yeah.
because you can still use cursor to switch between windows.
Is there
So
any
it isn't.
is there anything that another sort of distro or sort of distro that does that you think you could kind of take inspiration from and perhaps implement it in your own, or is there anything out there that you think's really done very well?
I guess the Debian like dock bar thing that they have in the newest version.
Version 20, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. The launcher, the full screen launcher, it's the way that they have like those kind of folders for the categorization,
Mm-hmm.
which we also have by the, but we don't have a full screen launcher. I think some of those things that their dock bar task manager has are pretty interesting. I guess also like the easy installer that I have, the Debian installer.
I know a lot of people really like that. Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure if it's the best ever, but yeah, I know.
The Deepin installer.
Yeah, a lot of people do appreciate quite just sort of how simple and straightforward it is.
If I remember right, it very much reminds me of the MacOS installer.
Yeah, I think a lot of what they do reminds me of well, I don't know actually. It might be like the chicken and egg swap round, because our Big Sur looks like Deepin, so it's like one's copying each other. It's very strange.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for a long time, there were distributions that focused specifically on looking like macOS, and that now macOS looks like
Yeah.
one of those Linux distributions.
Yeah.
Did you see some of the sort of people's reactions to it when the what's their like what's their thing called? Their unveiling. What's their event called when they do their WDC?
The Worldwide Developer Conference. Yeah.
Did you see some of the reactions from people on like Twitter just going into a frenzy about how they've literally stolen the Linux look and feel? I found it so funny.
Yeah.
What do you think about distributions that specifically market themselves as a clone of something else? And that goes to both of you.
I think that's completely the wrong approach.
What about you, Zero?
I don't know. I mean, ones that explicitly say that they are aiming to be a sort of Windows clone or a macOS clone or something like that, then yeah, I'd agree. But then there are some that are, say, more heavily inspired by one or the other, but they do have their own things. So, like, just for example, say like Elementary OS is like very macOS inspired, like, to the point where a lot of their functionality looks basically macOS too.
The thing is, though, I reckon that we're kind of an outlier on that, because my most viewed video is a video called Linux FX, which is an out-and-out Windows clone. So it seems that there is definitely a market out there for people that kind of want like a market version of Windows or something, and I find it strange. I've still not decided where I fall onto it, because I wouldn't use it. I'd never go out of my way to use like a clone of a clone. But is there an argument to say it's good that it's getting people into Linux, and perhaps they might venture out of that and go for it? I don't know where I fall on that.
I mean, if Eric Raymond's right and Windows just becomes an emulation on top of Linux, then the whole thing's a little bit moot, then, isn't it? Of having a Linux stream,
but yeah, I was shocked at how many views that one got, and I wasn't nice about it. I kind of memed it a bit, but it still was like, people were like, yeah, I like this, and I was like, well, okay. So there is definitely some people out there that do want that sort of knockoff market clone of an operating system.
Yeah, they want that bootlegged feel to it.
One of the funniest comments on that video, actually, the Linux FX one I did, was I think someone in the comments was like, "Where's the Activate Windows watermark?" And that cracked me up.
Activate Linux.
Yeah, Activate Linux. Would you ever think about implementing because I know a few distros are now doing this, Uri, like a virtual assistant kind of thing? Is that anything you've thought about?
Well, for the desktop, not really. I don't see the point. I have never seen the point. On the mobile, however, would be something that we could add.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Croft has some support for Plasma.
Right.
And so yeah, we could look into it when we start expanding on the mobile. But yeah.
But you just think on a desktop doesn't fit.
Yeah.
No, I think I agree with you there.
It really doesn't make sense. You have two hands to use your keyboard and mouse. It's way more.
Yeah, so the Linux FX one also had like a Cortana clone as well, which had some how do you say it, like a funny voice, to be fair, and I think it's it cracked me up. So before we wrap up, is there anything anyone wants to mention that we might not have covered, or anything you'd like to say?
I don't know. Like, I don't know if the FreeTube app rewrite is worth mentioning.
I've never actually used FreeTube, so you can take
never used FreeTube.
You can take the lead
as
there if you
far
like.
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, FreeTube is basically just a client for YouTube that adds that layer of abstraction such that, you know, there's none of the Google tracking and all this stuff going on behind the scenes, but it still can proxy videos through the NVIDIA's network if you want it to as well, and it manages all your subscriptions and stuff like that.
Right.
It is available as an app image.
Oh, well,
It
there
is
you go.
also available as a Deb package. It's available as an RPM package. It's available as source code. It's available as everything else under the sun. But the developer and the community around it have spent many months doing a rewrite to remove a lot of the odds and ends issues that existed in previous versions, and I have to say I'm very impressed with the work that they've done.
I might have to check it out after this little podcast.
I think you should, man.
I don't know. I've got a lot to do tonight. We'll see.
Just add it to the pile.
Honestly, I don't need nothing else to do tonight. It's been a right nightmare today.
Oh,
it's happened again.
Is he?
I don't know.
Isn't he?
He's back.
He's back.
Okay, so to wrap things up, do you want to let everyone know how to find you and Nitrux and stuff, Uri, and what you've got coming forward?
Yep. You can follow Nitrux on social media. We have pretty much all our social media channels listed on the website at the top left.
And that's nxos.org, isn't it?
Yep, that's nxos.org, and you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. If you don't like Facebook, you can on Mastodon. Or if you're okay with Facebook, you can also follow us on Instagram. And yep, you can also join the Telegram group for Nitrux. MauiKit also has a social media account at Twitter and a Telegram group.
If you want to, after this call's ended, drop me the links to the Telegram groups, etc. I'll put them in the description to this video.
Yep.
All right, nice speaking to you, gentlemen.
Yeah, nice to speak to you as always, mate.
Take care, and that is episode 6 done and dusted, yeah? So we're ready for episode 7.
Yeah.
Always.
Always, perfect.
Always ready.
Always ready. Take it easy, people. See you later.